Greetings to all those assembled here via Zoom. My name is Mark Pattison. I am the past president of the Shepherd Park Citizens Association, one of the co-sponsors of this evening's candidate forum with 8 of the 24 DC Council at-large candidates. In fact, 6 are here right now. We are down 2. Marcus Batchelor has not yet signed in, and neither has Franklin Garcia, but we do have the other 6, Claudia Berrigan, Calvin H. Gurley, Kathy Henderson, Chander J. Raman, Alexander M. Padro, and Maria Pickering. And now we've got a Calvin Gurley picture, which is good, although Calvin's not in the picture. There he is. All right, now if you would mute yourself, Mr. Gurley, and we're going to get started. I want to acknowledge the presence of ANC 3G/4 Chair Randy Speck. The Advisory Neighborhood Commission there is another co-sponsor. Randy is our gatekeeper and timekeeper.
Hello.
And most of your statements, candidates, will be 60 seconds or less. And I'm going to throw this over now to our other co-moderator, Robert Gordon, the president of the Chevy Chase Citizens Association. Robert.
Well, welcome. I'm very glad you're all here. We are going to try to be expeditious and finish up within an hour. What I'd like you to do is introduce yourselves, and the way we'll do that is to take a minute from each of you, and we'll operate in alphabetical order. So the first to speak would be Claudia Berrigan. So Claudia, why don't you unmute yourself and spend a minute discussing yourself. You're muted.
Yep, there you go. How you doing? Thank you so much. My name is Claudia Barragan, and I am running for an at-large council seat. Yeah, I don't expect you to say it, like roll your R's. However, so my name is, like I mentioned, I am not a politician. I'm an urban planner. My platform is diversity, equity, and action. And when I speak about diversity, I don't just talk about my ethnicity. I'm Aymara, I'm a Latina, and I've been living here for 30 years. I'm also talking about my profession. So I'm an urban planner, and I have been working in the district for 20 years in community development. I'm a subject matter expertise in equitable development, and that brings a whole plethora of skill sets that currently none of the candidates have, and definitely there isn't anyone in council currently that has that ability, those technical skills. I'm also, I have a master's degree in environmental policy, so I also bring the environmental policy subject matter expertise, specifically in environmental justice and equity. I also used to work for Councilmember Trayon White as a policy analyst. And I am an ANC, so I know this is a civic association. I have great respect for civic associations. I have great respect for neighborhood organizations. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next up is Marcus Batchelor. Will you?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus Batchelor. I am a third-generation Washingtonian, born and raised and still live in Congress Heights. I'm the current vice president and Ward 8 representative on the DC State Board of Education. I was elected 4 years ago as the body's youngest ever member. And before that, served as an advisory neighborhood commissioner here in Congress Heights. I'm running for the DC Council because I believe that now at this time, with the decisions before the council over the next 4 years that will impact the future of our city for the next 40, we not only need leaders at the table with the right experience, but with the right perspective. I've experienced bearing the brunt of our city's deepening inequalities, but I've also dedicated my life to service both on the ground and in government to get things done. And I want to go to the council to do that, to make sure that DC is a city that works for all of us. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Franklin Garcia is not here, so we'll move along. Calvin Gurley, please.
Well, good evening. My name is Calvin Gurley, born in DC and raised, graduated from Eastern High School, but served on the president's Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Public Housing. Also was a auditor for the federal government for 25 years, so I have audit experience. But enough about me. I want to tell you a story about a community called River Terrace. And right next to River Terrace was the Pepco generating plant. And there, the generating plant was throwing all types of toxins in the river and burning recycled oil. Well, seniors and young folks were getting all types of respiratory illnesses and asthma. And there was an ANC commissioner by the name of George Gurley, my uncle. And he and I gave him a little help, and several years closed down the Pepco plant. And that sounds familiar with a lot of folks. We have our citizens who are asking for us council members and mayor for help, and they turn their back, just like George Gurley. We had crime increasing, we have shootings, and we asked more police presence.
Time's up.
And they turn their back on us.
Thank you.
Why we need new leadership.
Thank you. The next up is Kathy Henderson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to our esteemed hosts and listening audience. I'm Kathy Henderson. I'm a 20-year effective advisory neighborhood commissioner, and I believe I'm the only one that can say I've won numerous awards for the work that I have done to uplift my community and my contributions to the city. I've been featured in People Magazine, Essence Magazine. I've won awards from the Chief of Police, U.S. Attorney's Office, and a plethora of other organizations. I'm a member of I was a former trustee of the Committee of 100 on the Federal City. I was a former at-large member of the DC Democratic State Committee. I've done a lot of work to uplift my community. I understand government. I understand how to make it work. And I've used a position that does not pay 1 cent to make a positive difference to uplift my community. I've been able to facilitate getting new roadways installed, trees planted, street lights. I've had a voice in practically every economic development project in Ward 5 and some that are citywide, including the National Stadium.
Thank you. You'll have more time to talk about that coming up.
All right, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
The next is Chandra Jayaraman. Mr. Jayaraman.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Chandra Jayaraman. I'm running because I think we can do so much better for our families and our community as a whole. We're in the middle of a crisis that requires a council member with the right expertise, the right experience, and a track record of producing results. And that's me, Chandra. I've been in emergency planning for the past 18 years. I helped work on the pandemic flu plan, and currently I'm helping childcare centers to reopen safely. And so I know what to look for when we get ready to reopen our schools. I've also been an ANC commissioner for the past 8 years, helping small businesses in my neighborhood to survive this pandemic. And I think because they're the lifeblood of our community, and they are the ones that make DC such a great place to live. But I also understand that we're at a critical moment about how we ensure the safety of our neighborhoods. So I convened ANC commissioners from every ward, the deputy chief of police, and council members to reimagine what policing could look like if we got it right. These are what families have told me are important to them, and this is what I will champion as a member of the DC Council.
Thank you. Alexander Padro.
Good evening. In the 20 years that I've been an advisory neighborhood commissioner representing the Shaw neighborhood and 17 years as executive director of Shaw Main Street, I've been working to transform the neighborhood into one that is one of the most attractive to live, work, shop, play, pray, and learn in the District of Columbia. Our city faces many challenges, but the expertise that I've gained over these past 20 years allows me to say that I'm uniquely positioned to be able to help the city through some of the major challenges that we're facing. Firstly, in terms of affordable housing, I'm one of the few candidates that actually has been involved in building affordable housing successfully, especially senior housing. I've been responsible for supporting over 400 new businesses in the Shaw neighborhood, and our businesses are going to be very severely challenged in the next year to survive. I'm uniquely positioned to help them to do that. And lastly, bringing equitable development to all 8 wards. I've been able to do it in Shaw. I'd like to do it with neighborhoods throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Most.
Next up is Maria Pickering.
That is so sad. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all to the host organizations for having us and for providing us an opportunity to let people know about our platforms. My website is mariadc2020.com. I am an immigrant and a refugee. I'm a longtime resident of Washington, D.C. I currently live in American University Park. I'm a parishioner at Holy Trinity Parish in Georgetown. And I've spent most of my career in the defense contracting space, but I've also been a small business owner, I've been a government employee, and I've worked with large organizations. So I have a breadth of experience, and I think my experience in industry and government uniquely qualifies me for the council's oversight role. I'm running because I think we can have a better future for citizens in all 8 wards. Thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to work backwards alphabetically and ask the first question. The first answeree will be Maria Pickering. The question is, how have you worked in your community to make life better for its residents?
Well, thank you for that question. I've been a hardworking, productive citizen for all my adult life. I have educated a woman engineer. I have been active with the DC Republican Party for well over 20 years. I've attended community meetings and kept myself informed of community-related issues, and I continue to work with my faith community and with other organizations to try to improve life for citizens in our city. I am not a career politician. I'm just a hardworking immigrant woman who is trying to get along here in the big city and work with a lot of people. I've had the pleasure of working in my career in small business and in the defense industry with people from all backgrounds. And I think Washington is a great city, and I think we can have a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pedro, same question.
I've helped to renovate and build thousands of new units of housing, including affordable housing, in my neighborhood. We've built new recreation centers, new libraries under my leadership, renovated our schools, created new parks, brought over 400 new businesses to the neighborhood, brought down crime in general, dramatically improving the quality of life on a citywide basis. I fought for saving and now renovating the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. I've helped neighborhoods throughout the city to demand community benefits through the planned unit development process, improving housing developments and other developments throughout the city. And I've been a pioneer for the Main Street program, which now is in 24 different neighborhoods, and also pioneered the Clean Team program that's in over 30 different neighborhoods throughout the city, primarily employing returning citizens. So I've affected the quality of life for folks throughout the District of Columbia.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Jayaraman.
Thank you very much for that question. I'll take those in 3 parts. Professionally, I've helped inner city kids find new pathways to economic independence when I worked at the Latin American Youth Center. Helped inner city kids that dropped out of high school find new pathways to get a job. I work in the field of emergency preparedness, so on a regular basis, I helped schools and childcare centers get ready to open and be prepared for any emergency. That's the line of work I'm in. As an ANC commissioner, as early as just a couple of hours ago, I testified before a zoning commission to advocate for seniors to have an adult daycare center, adult day center in Ward 6. And I testified for that. I've helped our small businesses to realize how they can survive by helping them get grants. On a personal level, I umpire Little League, and I get donations for some of our homeless who get a voucher housing, and they don't have anything but a bed and a couch. So the donations from our neighbors, I take it to them to help turn their apartments into homes that they can live in.
Thank you. Ms. Henderson?
Yes, I've done a lot to really improve the quality of life for my residents. I work very closely with my current commander, the chief of police, the frontline officers, past commanders, past chiefs of police. I've worked effectively with pretty much every government agency to address issues in my community. I've had street lights installed to improve the safety of my community. I facilitated adding speed humps. I've had cars towed. I've done a lot of work, including working with Congresswoman Norton and our federal partners to really uplift my community. When I moved to my community back in 1998, people laughed and they said, "Why are you moving over there? Oh my God, what are you doing?" Now my community is one of the most sought after communities and emerging communities in the city, where the average housing price is about $600,000. Now, some people say, well, you know, you're forcing people out, but people are moving in. And it's a testimony to the work that I've done with our agencies. And I've fulfilled my role as an advisory neighborhood commissioner to serve as a liaison between 2,100 citizens, the DC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Gurley? You're muted. Take your muting off. Your sound is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll start from the beginning. Coming out of college, acted as president of the Fairlawn Civic Association. From there, we established in Anacostia the first Orange Hat Patrol. And that patrol turned into chapters throughout the city. And we dealt with security. We have a good relationship with the police. From that particular point, I went on and I served on the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Housing. So there's a lot of issues of housing. I know how to maintain, how to improve it, the social services that it needs to survive, and how to help its residents. Many know that I've been fighting against PEPCO and their rate increases. I'm a good friend of the Office of the People Council as far as the PEPCO and DC Water and their rates every year when they come to the council and ask for an increase. Also a part of the Echelon PEPCO, we protested against that merger. But most of all, I like to inform the citizens of what's happening. Most of our candidates right now may know some things, but we're drinking right now recycled water, as they call it, from toilet to tap.
Well, I have to cut you off there. You'll have another chance. Mr. Batchelor.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You know, my story is only possible because I came from a community that poured so much into me, and naturally, from the start, I dedicated my life to serving this community. Separate from my 6 years in public office, 4 on the DC State Board of Education, and 2 on the Advisory Neighborhood Commission, where I've worked to expand and improve the quality of education and quality of life for residents east of the river, but families across our city. I started my career working at the Department of Employment Services and Youth Programs, where I mentored youth on college and career readiness and employability skills. I was a community liaison in the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, worked at the Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative, and apart from that, I have dedicated and got my start as an activist, first working and organizing to make DC the 51st state, and then working on issues related to workers and working class families over the last 10 years. And so I'm really proud of the work and all we've been able to achieve together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ms. Berrigan.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned, I am an urban planner and I have been practicing for about 20 years. So some of the improvements to the quality of life, they all revolve around development and equitable development, proven equitable development. So I mobilized and facilitated peer-to-peer trainings for the comprehensive plan amendment cycle that just happened in 2016. And I single-handedly helped with other specific, and actually, you know, some people from one of the civic associations present today, to increase the number of amendments from 200 in 2011 to 3,000 in 2017. The comprehensive plan is really important because that expands for the next 10 years. The other areas that I helped was in advocacy with childhood lead exposure and lead testing in public facilities. Also lead pipe replacement. I think that's really important for all of our utilities and how bad they are, the current state. I also drafted a critical risk rate school funding bill that ensured that equitable funding for schools were spread.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to question number 2. Given the financial hit DC has taken due to COVID, what spending cuts or revenue increasing measures would you pursue to help restore the district's financial health? And we're going to start with Kathy Henderson.
Thank you for the question. I am not a tax and spend future legislator, and if elected to the council, I certainly will not be a tax and spend council member. Immediately, I would look at defunding the controversial McMillan project, which would save the city approximately $75 million. And I would cut the Office of Neighborhood Engagement, which is nothing more than a political front for Friends of the Mayor. So that's $80 million in savings that I would spearhead right away. The Ward 5 community and members throughout the preservation community and the city have really scoffed at the shoddy way the McMillan project infiltration sand site has been given away using city funds, and it's just wrong. And as one of your at-large council members, I'll make sure that there are no backroom deals or giveaways to developers of our valued historic or even non-historic property. I'll be advocating.
Thank you very much.
Not outside interests.
Thank you. Next up, Calvin Gurley.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Given the financial hit DC has taken due to COVID, what spending cuts or revenue increasing measures will you pursue to help restore the district's financial health?
I believe this is a time now that DC can tighten its belt. This is a good time for residents of or homeowners of DC to experience a moratorium in property tax increases. That being that property assessments would be done every 2 years instead of every 1 year. That would be relief to our homeowners. However, as far as income or incoming revenue, as far as our school system, I'll have the council on that particular promise they reneged on. And that is, if DC were to bring in a lottery game, that a percentage of that revenue would go to our schools. Well, when WIMS came in, that promise was broken. So to refinance our schools and to invest more in our children, we will have that promise renewed. Secondly, cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse. And that is get rid of the trolley operations. And also there's 11th Street Park or Bridge Park that's about to be built. One of the largest and expensive projects in DC. We need to suspend that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your time is up. The next up is Marcus Batchelor.
I appreciate the question. You know, I think what we need to realize is that the district government as a $16.5 billion business is not the only thing that's been economically hit by this crisis, the 600,000 plus 700,000 plus residents and counting that it serves have also been economically impacted as well. And so now is a time for us to for sure dig more deeply and spend on those things that we know are critical to our recovery. PPE for all workers, bridging the digital divide in our classroom, paying for paid leave and sick leave that's going to allow people to not have to choose between their health and their incomes. But it's also going to mean not just spending more, but spending better. And as somebody who's run a small independent government agency for the last 2 years and that's been impacted by this crisis, I know how to cut and still do things like make sure our employees get a cost of living increase. That's the type of pragmatic and experienced leadership I'll bring to the council.
Thank you very much. Next up is Claudia Barragan.
Yes. So I believe like that we need to be more targeted with how we spend our money. One of the big issues that I had that prior to COVID in legislature is that there's been proposals for bills that are very costly, and they're costly because they're very general. They apply to everyone, and the need is very specific. And we have data to be more targeted with those services. So I think that this is a time to really look at that in terms of spending cuts. I also think that we need to look at other sources of revenue, like ticket repayment amnesty, for example. Right now, there's a whole bunch of money that hasn't been paid in tickets. And I think that what we need to do is if we do an amnesty, we will be able to receive half of that money right now, right away. And we will be able to provide relief to many families that have been struck by tickets and high costly parking tickets. I also think that we need to do more monitoring and evaluation of programming, and especially in
Well,
thank you.
we'll cut you there. Thank you. Next up is Myra Pickering.
Hi, thank you for that question. Well, one of the reasons I'm running is because I think we need prudent management in city government. The mayor's chief financial officer has predicted lower revenues for the next 2 years, and I think we need to lead by example and tighten our belts. One of the first things I would propose is at least a 20% pay cut for members of the city council and for the mayor and some of her senior staff. Some of these people make more than congressmen, and I think we need to really look at how we're spending our taxpayer dollars in times of limited resources and looking at decreased revenues for the next 2 years. I think we can do more with less if we look at efficiencies in running some of the agencies. I think we need to look at some of the sweetheart real estate deals that one of my fellow candidates mentioned. I know citizens are upset with that.
Thank you very much. Same question to Alexander Pedro.
So over the past 20 years, I've managed about a $10 million budget all told. So I know how to make cuts if necessary, but I also know how to work to make sure that proper oversight generates bang for the buck. I believe the council has done a miserable job in terms of oversight on the budget. We're not getting the full benefit of the massive investments that we're making in education and in affordable housing, to name just 2 areas. But we also need to think outside of the box. One of the proposals that I would make to try to reduce the loss in commercial property taxes and in sales taxes resulting from a significant number of businesses likely closing in the next year due to COVID-19 is actually to establish a cap on commercial property tax collections to the percentage of space that businesses are actually able to use. You're paying, using 30% of your space or 50%, that's how much property tax you pay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the last answerer goes to Mr. J. Raman.
Thank you so much. I don't know about anybody else. When I've ever lost income, the first thing I do, I check my budget to see where I can save money. Cut out all the extra expenses that really I don't necessarily need. And I think what we've found with the COVID-19 crisis is that so many of our government agencies are working outside of the office that we can start to look at, where is our essential needs? What do we need to bring back when we restart again? I think there is a lot of duplication of effort. I think a lot of our agency work in silos. So I think we can look at that. I think we also need to put the brakes on things like, the streetcar system where it doesn't really go anywhere. We can also do some practical things like, instead of repaving every brick on an entire block, let's repair our streets and let's repair our sidewalks in smaller amounts and save that money for other purposes and make our money go much further. So that's what I would propose.
Thank you very much. The next few questions will be asked by my colleague, Mark Patterson.
Thank you, Robert. First, a favor to ask of all the candidates. We're getting some intermittent interference, so if you're not answering a question, please put yourself on mute. This question will go alphabetically, starting with Marcus Batchelor, and then working all the way through Claudia Barragan. The question is, what steps would you take to improve the physical environment in DC? A couple of for instances. Would you support additional legislation regarding childhood lead paint remediation? Would you promote renewables? Marcus, the floor is yours.
The short answer is yes to those things. And I think it's a broad question, but I'll try to get through as many ideas as I have. I think one, clearly, yes, we have to fight for environmental justice and climate resiliency in our city. And that means as we think about how to build a green city and also put people back to work, that DC has its own Green New Deal where we're building infrastructure and putting folks to work to build the resiliency of our city long term. I've also been served on the Chesapeake Bay Local Government Advisory Committee, where I've worked to figure out how to improve not just our waterways that serve our communities here in DC, but across the region. And I'll work with leaders across the region to continue to do that work. And clearly we need to expand access that residents have to green space by building up our tree canopy, especially east of the river, making sure we work in green space into new development and see access to fresh fruits and vegetables, outdoor space, and exercise as a critical part of what every community needs to be successful.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Calvin Gurley, you're next. You're muted. Unmute yourself, Calvin.
Button there. So much to do in a little time we have here. But some of these things should have been done years ago. I first would attack the rain tax right now. Rain tax is unnecessary. There should be a straight flat tax that users use, and it shouldn't be based on the God-given rain that touches outside our homes. As far as green space, we know that developers are getting more of a stipend than homeowners by using green space on top of their roofs. They have transferable type of rights that they can transfer that credit, but we don't. Washing, as far as WASA and the, I call it DC Water, we need to take care of this tap to toilet program that they're having right now. And that is that we're not giving as residents quality water. And that goes back to green space. Right now, there's only about 40% green space in this city. And we are building on top of that. I mean, we're going to have more roll-off of wastewater.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Kathy Henderson, you're next.
Yes, I am a biologist by training, a lifelong environmentalist. I certainly support the health of our children, the health of the environment. I've worked to promote LEED certification for buildings. I am a member of the Citizens Advisory Group for the Pepco banning cleanup. I've done a lot of work to make sure that we protect our environmental health. I've identified brownfields during the Fenty administration. I actually assisted with that effort to remove a hazardous site from Bladensburg Road, which is now the site of a Denny's restaurant, which is life affirming for our community. Not only does it add much needed dollars to our budget coffers, it also employs our residents. So I have a record of supporting healthy, sustainable efforts to make our city cleaner, safer, and more livable. And as your at-large council member, oh my God, I will hit the ground running on day one to introduce legislation. I have I've already talked to Councilmember Che about the Fireworks Safety Act, which basically seeks to
Time's up.
remove fireworks debris from our waterways.
Thank you, Kathy. We've got to move on. Chandra J. Raman, you're next.
May I ask that you repeat the question, please, before the timer
Sure.
starts?
What steps would you take to improve the fiscal environment in DC? And the two, for instances, I had regarding childhood lead paint remediation or renewables, but it's an open topic.
Thank you very much. I really do think that there are some certain parts of the city that have a lot of lead in them, particularly when you have houses that are over 100 years old. So anytime a full renovation occurs, I think we need to do an examination of whether is there any lead, asbestos, and we need to make sure a developer does that. And then in the same way as a property owner that takes over a new building, they need to test for those kinds of properties. They don't just cover it up, but they actually address the problem and remediate it. On a broader level, I think, increasing the environmental that we live in is very, very important. I think the mayor's proposal to plant 1,000 new trees is great, but the problem is they don't water them. So half of them die in the first year or the first hot summer. So I think we can do a lot better job of making sure our green spaces, when we especially spend the money to plant trees and make it better, that they survive and they are here for generations. And over here, I think we've got RFK as a great opportunity to provide a lot more green space for all DC residents.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Mr. Alexander Padro.
I got my start as a community activist through historic preservation. And preservation is not just involved in buildings, but also in landscapes. I would propose expansion of the historic preservation tax credit to all the historic districts throughout the city, especially for low and moderate income homeowners, but also to use that as a tool to help to preserve and improve landscapes and green space throughout the city. Green space is at a premium. It's very coveted. Developers are usually looking to replace it with impermeable surfaces and new buildings, but we need to come up with additional incentives to try to keep our green space and to improve it wherever possible.
Thank you, sir. Maria Pickering, you're up.
Hi, thank you for that question. Well, the first thing that I would recommend we do is something that seems very obvious, and that is pick up the trash in our roads and streets. We have a beautiful city, and every time I drive down New York Avenue or 295 South or the Suitland Parkway, these beautiful, beautiful drives, I'm appalled at all the trash lying along these streets and roads. I participated myself in a neighborhood cleanup in Ward 8 a few weeks ago with some fellow citizens, and we're picking up trash 2 blocks away from the home of our hometown hero, Frederick Douglass. There are some abandoned properties where people just throw bottles and all kinds of trash. We've had a one-party monopoly in this town that claims to respect the environment. Well, you wouldn't know it walking around the streets, and that's in all 8 wards. So I think just a general cleanup of what we have is a good place to start. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, ma'am. And our last answer to this question is Claudia Barragan.
Yes. So again, this is my area of expertise. So in terms of renewable and lead, we have been doing that work since 2012, and I think we should continue to do that. It's important to understand that environmental justice is not just about inequities, but it's also about just transition, so creating more jobs and making sure that everyone is able to benefit from the new sustainability that we're seeing in the district. LED lighting needs to be expanded. In my neighborhood as an ANC, we just haven't seen any of that new LED lighting. Wi-Fi access is really important in terms of to address the digital divide. And definitely the alleys. I think the alley work really needs to be done. DPW is being pulled right now because of the marches and protests, and we need to clean up those alleys immediately, especially during a pandemic. And then finally, accessibility who are living with disabilities. I think that's really important. I think we need to be more, oh, thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Our next question, we will go backwards, starting with Chandra J. Raman, and that would mean Henderson, Gurley, Batchelor, Barragan, Pickering, and Padro. And the question is this: projections from MPD show that by the end of 2021, DC will have the lowest level of police officers since 1999. What are your thoughts, and should the council take legislative measures? Chandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that question. I think we'll need to look at what we ask our officers to do. Frankly, I think we ask them to do way too much. And if we can get those things that don't belong on their plate, that they're not trained to do, off their plate, I think we can look at what kind of force do we need over the next 20 years and project what kind of budget that we need. You know, I really think our social services agency should do more and take services when they're needed, where they're needed. So it doesn't always fall on our officers to do those kinds of things that don't fit with their training and what they're trained to do. So I do think we need to look at what our population, as our population rises, and also what we need to do to make sure our streets are safe. I think a lot of that is addressing the root causes of the issues, which is economic independence, providing opportunities for our young people so they don't have to choose between, you know, hustling on the streets, and they will choose to go go to a job that they're trained for and make a good living.
Thank you, sir. Kathy Henderson, you're next.
Oh my God, public safety is the most critical issue facing our city. You can't have economic development, high performing schools, or any of the other good quality of life without public safety. Yes, I would definitely support taking legislative action to increase funding for our police. Right now, that $15 million that the council has taken from MPD results in 300 officers not being available to police our streets. We've recently seen the riots. Our Chief Newsham, God bless him, he's had to call on our other law enforcement partners to help make arrests to bring control to the streets. We need to make sure we have enough officers. We're getting ready to lose a good number of our officers to retirement. They're coming to the end of their careers and they're moving on. We need to make sure that we have enough officers to keep us safe. And that's certainly one of my priorities. Again, you can't talk about any of the other excellent opportunities for our city unless our public safety is on point in all 8 wards. I can't stress that enough.
Thank you. Calvin Gurley, you're next. Your answer, please. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, I think your statistics are pretty much wrong. Around 4,200 police officers were on board at the time of Kathy Lanier. Then there was an exodus, and right now, when we have 4,200, we had a population of about 450,000. But currently, we're hitting 700,000 residents in the city, and we have approximately 2,700 policemen, from my understanding and talking to a police officer. But I've been pushing every summer. I've been pushing, and Ms. Henderson can let you know about the DC Summer Initiative Program, in which I wanted to carry up to Ward 4, in which I lived, but only Ward 5, 6, 7, and 8 got that particular incentive for each summer. I think we need to bring in the police cadet programs to our high schools, and also the fire cadet programs to our high schools, in which we can recruit from our own residents and they can serve in their own community.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Marcus Batchelor, you are next in line.
Thanks. I think it's time to acknowledge that public safety doesn't start or end with the police. And I think if there's any evidence is that DC's as a city has one of the highest rates of police per person in the country, and has seen an uptick in homicides year over year. And even during the pandemic, we chose to invest more in police and less in violence prevention. What we've got to do is think about those things on either end of the police. We need to talk about on the front end, access and opportunity for communities in which gun violence and violence is the root cause of those things. We've got to think about access to mental health supports, both in the community and at school. And we need to talk about empathy and building community. On the back end, we need to talk about reentry with agency and with redemption. We need to talk about criminal justice with compassion, and we need to talk about trauma recovery for the victims of violent crime who more often than not become the perpetrators. And so that's what I would focus on as a member of the council with this once in a generation opportunity to reimagine public safety.
Thank you, sir. Claudia Barragan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we would definitely need to talk about community policing more than even this. Homegrown policing is important. I think that we need more bilingual officers and then more incentives for homegrown people to decide to go into public safety. Expand the role of officers from patrolling to community engagement professionals. I think that's really important, engaging with the community. We have awful police officers. We have to say that. In my 4th district, I have been stopped. There's constant stop and frisks happening. I also think that we need to address the budgeting, the defunding request right now, and really talk about reforming of police systems, specifically training. And also, finally, the public, I'm so glad we have a new deputy mayor of public safety. I hope he stays, because the problem was in the leadership. That was where the problem was for the last 6 years or 8 years that we had a really bad deputy mayor of public safety.
Thank you, ma'am. And our final answer, our final candidate for this question, Alexandra Padro.
I found over the years that the most effective police officers are the ones that actually live in their communities and live in the city. We can't put in place a residency requirement because we're not a state. Perhaps that may change in the near future and we'll be able to affect that. But we can come up with incentives to make it possible for police officers to become homeowners and to live in the communities that they serve. While the number of officers that are ideal in order to police a population of our size is debatable, the quality of our police officers would be enhanced if our officers are actually residents and taxpayers in the District of Columbia. So that is one of the measures that I would undertake. But I do not believe in defunding the police. I believe that our citizens, will rely on the police even.
Okay, very good. This next portion of the forum will be.
I think you didn't ask Ms. Pickering that question.
Oh, I didn't. My mistake. Maria, I'm sorry I overlooked you.
Okay, thank you. Very quickly, I would say that I support fully funding our police force, and I support all kinds of incentive measures to encourage our police officers to live in the community. A few years ago, I was with a small business in the security training space. I had an opportunity to tour the MPD training facility in Blue Plains, and I can tell you their scenario-based training is the best in the country, which means it's the best in the world. Now, given that our police force has a unique mission because we are not quite a city, not quite a state, we interact with other law enforcement agencies. So our MPD is really first rate, and I think we need to support them to the hilt. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies again, Ms. Pickering. And so I'm going to turn over the next part of the forum to Robert Gordon. Robert?
Yes, the next question is Council members Nadeau and Trayon White reintroduced an omnibus rent control bill providing for strengthening, expanding rent control. Please comment about that. And let's start with Kathy Henderson. Would you like me to read that again? You're muted. There we go.
Okay. Yes, I support protections for our renters. This pandemic economy has really rendered hardships throughout our region and throughout our country. So we certainly want to be able to keep people renting in the District of Columbia and still being able to provide for their families. I'm a real estate broker by profession, and I certainly support property value, home ownership. And I support not only strengthening rent control, but really strengthening the Housing Production Trust Fund and being more creative in building affordable housing and helping our residents transition to home ownership, which will actually grow our tax base. So the short answer is yes, but we need to expand that to include home ownership, fully funding the Housing Production Trust Fund, and finding more ways to make sure that we can promote home ownership.
Thank you. Chandra Jayaraman.
Thank you very much. Rent control, while it is admirable, I think has to be means tested. I think the people who need it most should be the ones that should benefit the most. And I think it can be offered in a way that in targeted areas that really need it. I don't think a broad-based rent control plan is the appropriate way, because people still have to pay mortgages. People still have to, the owners of those small buildings are also, small business owners. Now, with large buildings and owned by corporate, I think there's more flexibility to require some sort of moderate type of rent assurances, so that people who are on limited income do not have to expend 50, 60, 70% of their wages on rent. That doesn't allow for them to really survive. So I think that's where we can have the most impact.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander Padro, your thoughts? I think I lost them. Well, let's move on to Maria Pickering.
Thank you. Rent control is well-intentioned, but it's not a good idea. In jurisdictions where it's been tried, the results have been the elimination of the middle class, with only the very wealthy and the very poor and a shabby housing stock. I think there are creative solutions we can look at to provide a spectrum of housing affordable to a broad variety of citizens without the draconian measures of rent control. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Barragan.
Yes. So if it wasn't for rent control, I would not have been living in a district for this long. And currently a tenant still. And buying a house is nearly impossible with the way that land cost values are in the district, land value costs. I do want to say that the OTA, the Office of Tenant Advocates, they were in the middle of finishing an inventory before COVID, and they were supposed to submit it. I would love to be able to see that inventory. I think having and assessing all of the buildings, all of the buildings that are rent controlled, and just in general in the city, I think we need to have that inventory. I also want to make sure that, as I mentioned before, that targeted policies are important. So expanding the relief to all tenants it's not a good option. I think that we really need to be more targeted and really make sure that those who have been living the longest and don't have as much money, that they are offered this relief. So I think that's really important. Closing the loops that are within rent control, I think that's also important. So yeah, so I definitely
very much.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Batchelor.
Yeah, I support the expansion of rent control, if for no other reason than the current law we have hasn't added a single unit of a single rent control unit in 30 years and has more holes than a little bit that allow hundreds of units to slip out from under the law every year. So we do need to expand and strengthen rent control in our city, not just for our poorest residents, but quite frankly, for a growing middle class that they themselves are one paycheck away from economic insecurity and homelessness. And so though that is the chief reason, but beyond that, we also need to acknowledge that the cost of living and the cost of housing is far outpacing the resources we're putting into communities like the Black community, who hasn't seen their wages grow since the height of the financial crisis in 2008. So if we're talking about housing for all that reaches all income levels, we've got to implement rent control and other creative solutions that prioritize preservation as much as we do production.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next answer is Calvin Gurley.
Okay, good. As far as rent control, we had one of the strongest rent control at one time on the East Coast, with support of tenant rent control. Currently now the rent control is favoring the landlord. But I do agree with Ms. Claudia in bringing up the office tenant advocate, in which we need to refund them and increase their funding to help them to defend all our tenants who are going against some of the opposition with their landlords. As far as public housing, we need to invest in that. There's nothing wrong, or it's not bad saying public housing. Public housing can also bring in our college grads who are suffering from student loans, and they can work in the community and help out the young folks to give them some type of image, some type of example to go after. And also those college students can mentor and help our young folks in our community of public housing. Most important right now, I do support the continued current ban on evictions.
Thank you. Did Mr. Padro, did you disappear on us?
Yes, unfortunately, I had a connection problem. If you could repeat the question, I'd love to be able to respond.
I will. Council members Nadeau and Trayon White reintroduce an omnibus rent control bill providing for strengthening and expanding rent control. Please comment.
I absolutely do support the extension of rent control, and I believe that we should have a task force or a commission that evaluates best practices of rent control on a national basis. I believe that we could tweak our rent control regulations so that they can be more effective. I am a product of a family that benefited from rent control in New York City. My mother is 99 years old and benefits from a combination of having lived in the same apartment, since the late 1960s to, and also, senior citizen rent control. So I believe that rent control is an important part of the set of tools that the council of the city needs to be able to use to ensure the future and continued availability of affordable housing at all levels.
Thank you very much. Mark, do you want to wrap this up? Yep. Getting through the next question?
Sure, we're going to do the lightning round. So Mr. Speck, please set the timer to 30 seconds. And we will start alphabetically from Calvin Gurley for our last question.
Yes, no?
What is your position on protecting the current height limits on buildings in DC?
Stay, let them stay as is. I do not like, I appreciate the congressional limits that we have now.
All right. Kathy Henderson.
I had some difficulty hearing you. Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What is your position on protecting the current height limits on buildings in DC?
Oh my God, I'm an absolute advocate. I'm a C100 member. I'm a former member of the Historic Preservation Review Board. The Height of Building Acts protects the views of our iconic skyline, and they should be for all district residents. So it is that 1910 Height of Buildings Acts is right on point, and I support it 1000%.
Okay, thank you. Chander.
Thank you very much. I would support that in the city's inner core. I think there are areas towards the borders of our city that are where we could allow for additional height and which could provide more additional housing for those who need it. So thank you.
Alexander Padro, the floor is yours.
As a preservationist, I am absolutely an advocate for maintaining the height limit. The height limit helps to protect the character and the appearance of our city and of our neighborhoods. And all you need to do is to look at New York City and the splinter buildings that are punctuating, the skyline today. To understand that the character of our city would be jeopardized if we were to eliminate the height.
Thank you. Maria Pickering, I don't forget you this time.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely in favor of keeping the height limits on our buildings and protecting the unique character of our city. Thank you.
Okay. Claudia Barragan.
Yes, I think we are a small city in terms of land area, and definitely we need to maintain those height limits. Also because COVID has shown us that high density is actually detrimental for something like what we're experiencing right now in the pandemic. It would have increased all of the deaths by numbers. So I am so glad that we are really ensuring the density is protected.
Okay, and our final candidate for this question, Marcus Batchelor.
Thanks. Yeah, I love our skyline, but I believe that there are places in the city where we can explore raising the height limit. I am all for, right, and I'm a history buff, and I'm all for the historic character of our city, but I believe that the true character of our city is determined by how many people we bring off the street and into permanent housing. And that's the orientation that I'll go to work to accomplish every day. And I think that that's what any leader elected to this seat should focus on more than anything else.
Okay, thank you. And for finally, we will start with Alexander Padro and work our way alphabetically. 30 seconds is your time limit for a closing statement. Mr. Padro.
My campaign slogan is dreams come true, which is shorthand for I'd like to help make every DC neighborhood's dreams come true. I was able to lead the revitalization and the renaissance of the Shaw neighborhood, maintaining its affordability and its diversity, both ethnic and economic. And I believe that I can help to work with citizens in neighborhoods throughout the city to also achieve that if they desire it.
Thank you. Maria Pickering, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us here. My website is Maria DC 2020. I think my experience in industry and government uniquely qualifies me for the council's oversight role. I think I'm the best qualified candidate. I'm also the only candidate representing the Party of Freedom and Reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Barragan.
Yes, definitely. Please go to my website, claudiafordc.com, and spread the word about me. I am asking for your vote with 28 bills on my pocket that have passed. I'm also asking for support because I have $250 in my campaign funding right now, unlike all the other candidates who have thousands. So definitely I need your support, and please vote for Claudia.
Okay, thank you. Marcus Batchelor, it's your turn.
Thank you. We need on November 3rd to elect leadership that understands that this job is about more than brick and mortar. It's about more than dollars and cents. It's about more than policies and white papers. It's about people and communities. And we need to elect leadership in November that's centered and rooted in our communities. I've spent my entire career in service to our neighbors, both on the ground and in government. And that's the type of breadth of leadership and depth of leadership that we need on the council right now to bring us out of this crisis and build back better than ever. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Calvin Gurley, it's your turn.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm looking forward to November 3rd and asking you to vote for me. For I have really committed myself to the task of serving you as your council member. It rings back to my uncle, George Girl in River Terrace, my brother, a police officer at the Boys and Girls Club, my sister ANC commissioner. So we have put our life and our spare time and our real time into serving this city, and I hope to do so again, November the 3rd, once we elect Calvin Gurley.
Thank you. Kathy Henderson, please.
Thank you. On November 3rd, we need to elect someone that is ready day one, who has a breadth of experience, I understand the council. I've testified thousands of times, it seems like, and I've already had a legislative success with Bill-160335, Protection of Advisory Neighborhood Commissioners, which was rolled into the Omnibus Public Safety Act. I'm not even on the council yet, and I've had a legislative success. Please go to my website, kathyhendersonfordcouncil.com, to see the breadth of the work that I've done on behalf of our citizens. It's time to put another woman on the council, an African-American woman, and someone with an award-winning record of serving the district citizens.
Thank you, Kathy. Kathy, your time is up. And we're going to move on to Chandra J. Raman.
Thank you so much. First, I think we're a unique moment. I think we need the right person at the right time, and that's me. I have the right expertise, the right experience, and for this moment. And I would ask you to visit my website, chander2020.com, and or on social media at chander4council. And would ask for your vote on November 3rd or sooner. Remember, everybody, you get 2 votes. I would like to ask for one of those 2 votes. So thank you so much. Again, Chandra J. Raman.
Thank you, and thank you to all the candidates for participating this evening. I want to remind everybody in the audience that this has been recorded, and at some point in the near future, this will be posted on YouTube along with the campaign forum that we did at 5 o'clock today. And we are going to have a 3rd forum featuring the other candidates on the 23rd, a Wednesday, I think 7 to 8 p.m. or so. Thank you all for looking in. Thank you all for participating, and the best of luck to all of you, because there are only 2 of you. So many.
You're right.
Thank you so much for your time, your effort.
Thank you, Patterson, Gordon.
I want to thank Randy for his timekeeping skills.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Yes. Opportunity.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.